All right, so we have some people entering already. Welcome.
Yes, thank you for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, so so I see that we have 13 participants, and I'm gonna briefly remind everybody that this is the Southwest chapter of IAEE, and this particular session is about exploring extended reality and live events today and tomorrow. I know that we're going to wait just for a minute or two to make sure that everybody is in from the waiting room. And I know that we'll have some participants joining us as in the next minute or so. And this session is open to everybody, whether they're IAE members or not. International Association of Exhibition Events is what IAE stands for. And we are the Southwest chapter that is sponsoring this. I'd like to also thank our annual sponsors of our chapter, who are GES and Anaheim Convention and Visitors Authority, or Bureau, I should say. We'll just start in one moment. So again, this session is one of my favorite topics on extended reality. And I'm going to start with Lori Schwartz. Lori is the CEO of StoryTech. She's a leading advisor and speaker in marketing and tech innovation. Lori collaborates with top creative and strategic executives of multiple brands, tech and content companies to ensure their understanding of emerging business models while designing unique experiences to create engagement. And she has a lineage of other great experiences, including CNN technology contributor, and a slew more, CES, NAB, some of the big names that we know, those conventions that she's been involved with. And like I said, she's a CEO of the experiential marketing firm StoryTech. Lori, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Erica. I think like many folks on the line today, one of the primary ways that I work with clients is through live events. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing right now and a lot of things that I'm looking at is blending the latest technology trends with brands and with sponsors, and helping everybody understand each other's role in the industry. And doing that by creating experiences at events. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today are tools in the toolkit for creating great experiences at live events, and also virtual events now too. So all of this is about, making that connection between attendees, exhibitors, sponsors, and really making the magic happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. And I'm going to introduce Derek Johnson as well. Derek is our other panelist or session panelist. Yay. And Derek and I know each other through a lot of different things. So I'm going to just shoot from the hip here, Derek, and then you can jump in as well. Derek was, when I first met him, was one of the facilitators of the digital event strategist panel accredited session that I was participating in, and was just fabulous. And he's also sits on the board of PCMA. PCMA is the organization that is the host of the digital event strategist accredited program. And he was just fabulous. So we connected immediately. He also joins me on the International Exhibition Think Tank group that we formed about a year and a half ago. And he also has worked for Tally Management. And I'm going to let you take it from there, Derek. You're fabulous. I'm a huge Derek fan, so I could go on and on.
Hello, everyone. So thank you very much for that, Erica. Derek Johnson here. I served previously as the Chief Diversity Officer and Director of Event Strategy with Tally Management. But now I am an independent consultant out in the space, specifically in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility initiatives. But I always say that my main role is to connect the DEIA initiatives of organizations with a sustainable vision of creating liberated experiences for all people through events. I'm a first-generation college student, and education is very important to me. So my connection to this topic came through kind of my nerdiness and wanting to get a certificate from MIT in artificial intelligence, and then geeking out over what virtual reality and augmented reality could actually do for events, and just testing that out in practical spaces. So I'm very excited to be a part of this conversation. Again, kind of like Lori, I have a passion for producing and executing organization strategies underneath the idea of leveraging technology and innovation to increase the educational experiences, building communities, and driving overall success. So happy to be here. Happy all of you are here also. And just going to pass this back to Erica.
Well, and so Derek and I have already done a session, but it was a fun cocktail type session. It doesn't really count about augmented reality, but it did count. Anyway, it's one of my favorite topics. And I think that a lot of people, it's a huge hot topic nowadays. And a lot of people want to understand it. I mean, you think about it and you go, it's AR, it's VR, it's XR, it's MR. What are all these Rs? All these realities? What the heck is it? And it is confusing, and it keeps on growing and changing along the way. And we're hearing big names about Metaverse, which we won't really get into because it's not even happening yet, but it will in the future. It's going to continue to change. And so I think that we should start there, is to kind of define what all of those are for people, because, and then also say, well, why, what does it matter to me? How is that affecting events and exhibitions?
Absolutely. Well, let me start with helping to define this. Let's look at extended reality as the umbrella term, okay? Everything is inside of extended reality, and often mixed reality as well. XR and MR are often used, together separately, but they mean the same thing. And that is the umbrella of us exploring how digital expands our reality. And I'm going to explain the difference between virtual and augmented. So virtual reality, and again, this is all under XR or MR umbrella. Virtual reality is when you literally go inside of a virtual world. So you are literally physically experiencing something inside a virtual world. And while it may not be, your body, you're in a headset, you have to put on a headset of some kind, and they call those HMDs, and you go inside of a world. Augmented reality is when you are still in your world, but digital assets are now in front of you and emerge. So you're augmenting your physical experience. So virtual reality, you go inside of a world. Augmented reality, you could say that world comes into your world. And then when we talk about mixed reality or extended reality, especially mixed reality, you're blending those things together, right? So not all AR is XR and not all VR is XR, but XR is all of those things. Does that make sense to everybody? And Derek, did you want to jump in?
No, yeah. So I mean, I would just add, when you think about VR specifically, as Lori mentioned, we are using this technology, the goggles, to allow, and headphones. If
I always have it by me.
Hey, carry them wherever you go. At this point in time, who knows? They may be part of our daily tools and resources, but you need some device to actually facilitate the movement of your mind and your senses into a new world. When it comes to augmented reality, it's normally leveraging a tool like your mobile device or a tablet to display this then three-dimensional world that exists already in our two-dimensional space. And then for mixed reality, it's a little combination of both, either or. So just wanted to throw out kind of the things that are involved when we think about these spaces. It's not just manipulating the air in front of us without a tool. We need tools to effectively demonstrate these worlds.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, Derek, because one of the things that everyone is so excited about with augmented reality and why it becomes really significant in our event space is that it's a bit more accessible than VR, because VR does require this device, and this device will get more affordable, will get smaller and more convenient to use over time, but it's still in the $300 to $500 area for a version of it that's pretty cool. This is the Oculus Quest 2. Whereas AR can be accessed by anyone's phone. And all of the current phones that are coming out are launching with AR capabilities. And those hardware manufacturers are all partnering and creating SDK software kits that allow folks to develop AR using their devices. And if I may geek out on you guys just for a moment, there was just a big show called Augmented World Expo that was in San Jose. And I went just for a day, and this was like a geek paradise, right? This is like everyone who's in this space was there and showcasing things. But there were two significant announcements many significant announcements, but two that I thought were really interesting just for regular folks like us who are maybe not deep in that space, but are looking at the tool sets, as Derek mentioned. One is that a company called Niantic, and you may or may not have heard of Niantic, but Niantic actually created Pokemon Go. And Pokemon Go is really this game that everyone has played and that blew up the concept of AR, of augmented reality, because that's what it is. You're holding your phone up and you're seeing the little Pokemon and you're rolling the fireball at it. That game, which became a billion-dollar success, created this sort of language for people to understand holding up their phone and aiming it at something in our world. And Niantic's whole philosophy is get people outside, get them exercising, create community, and create global gameplay. And they did that with Pokemon Go. And what they announced at Augmented World Expo was an SDK that gives everybody access to develop on their platform. And so what they're really doing is lighting up this global gameplay. And when I say game, I don't even mean you have to build a game, but you can use those concepts to create experiences. And they also launched a fund where they're going to be funding developers to create these games. So what they're really trying to do is build an ecosystem of folks using their solution. And so that really lights up the space. So that's on the software side. And then on the hardware side, Qualcomm announced that they also have an SDK that works with their Snapdragon processor. And again, that's on the hardware side. But what you're seeing is these major investments from hardware and software companies to make AR development more accessible. And so on the geek side, again, that just lights up the world with potential.
Yeah, definitely. And so for virtual reality, I think an example would be maybe the 2018 film. I don't know if all of you saw Ready Player One. That's a clear example of VR. Everyone in the world has these headsets, and they get taken into this fantasy world. And there's a huge contest to find these Easter eggs throughout. And the winner of this contest ultimately then gets control over the entire space. But that is an example of what virtual reality is and how it's potentially consumed and used. But yeah.
So
that's good stage setting.
I have, by the way, I've put Lori's information and links in the chat and Derek's LinkedIn in the chat. And also, if you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat, but we will have Q&A at the end as well. But also I wanted to ask you about this. It seems like every day something new comes out. And now with augmented reality, of course, there are glasses as well. So it's not just on your phone. Augmented reality has glasses where you still see your atmosphere around you,
Yes.
but it brings in some of these Pokemon or augmented kind of things along the way. So it can incorporate that. The glasses used to be really expensive, but it seems like the prices are going down now. And when everybody like, Apple is coming out with them, and now they're starting to look a little bit more chic. And I've seen them used in an event where the people that were live in the event had mixed reality. It was the whiskey event I had told you about before, where people really were immersed in that event. And I think people learn so much from things like that because it touches all their senses, sight, see, touch, smell, and augmented and mixed reality help bring that to life. But the people that were following along at home had the app and had an augmented reality experience in the app. So that if you guys want to dive into that a little bit, and then also I will put in the chat a link where it has a lot of these resources in it, and links to the videos of augmented reality and virtual reality and how they're being incorporated in our world and retail today. But if you want to kind of jump into that a little bit.
Yeah, I could start, Derek. So one of the things I just put into the chat was both the Niantic and Qualcomm announcements, but also Ray-Ban. Ray-Ban had announced their augmented reality glasses, and Bose, about a year and a half ago, had a set of glasses that were augmenting reality with audio, not visual. And so there is a form factor here, and you bring up a great point, Erica. In order for the average consumer to want to invest in a pair of glasses that brings the AR into their world, the form factor has to be there, and it has to be affordable. And so when a company like Ray-Ban creates fashion-forward AR glasses, that's more likely for popular adoption. And that's what really we're talking about, is getting people to feel comfortable with all of these tools and having them readily available. I mean, in the very, near far future, probably contact lenses will have AR capabilities, right? So that you won't need to hold up any device, but that if you choose, you can be wearing something that will bring information. And I think what drives consumer adoption is almost enterprise adoption. And so enterprise has really adopted augmented reality as a solution in the workforce. And so what you might see out there hanging on a telephone pole right now is a worker who has a helmet on with a little visor in front. And that visor is bringing an overlay of digital information, instructions, things like that. So AR has really exploded in enterprise as a delivery system of information for workers, and in medical as well, and more in extended reality and mixed reality. But that adoption of AR in enterprise has really lit up consumer devices, right? Because if it's doing well and exploding somewhere, there's a trickle down. So enterprises had this explosion in AR work solutions. And so you're seeing devices being launched that consumers can use. And if we can make cheap, easy, affordable, and socially acceptable devices like that, then to Derek's point, it's going to show up at events. And it's starting to show up at events. And if I could give one example, Derek, and I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah.
The Consumer Electronics Show is coming up in January. And again, in my shameless plug, I do a lot of work there. But one of the things that just happened is LG just announced what their experience is going to be in their booth. And they understand that this year is this half year where, a lot of people are staying home, but a lot of people are also coming. So they created an experience in their booth, or are creating it, where they're going to have kiosks and QR codes and VR headsets so that the at-home audience and the in the show audience can both have similar experiences. And these kiosks will include QR codes that you lift up your phone to in the physical booth and get an experience on your phone. And it's the same experience that folks who don't come to the show will have. Now, the folks at the show will get a different experience and a more physical experience, but you can see how at a show, merging these two worlds together is a direction that could be gone into for most exhibitors, which is providing that connection between this post-pandemic world of hybrid activations.
Yeah,
Mr.
and I think so from the practicability side of all of this, I see it used in three different core areas of technology. The first is very straightforward: marketing, building your brand awareness, engaging with an audience in a way that isn't limited. So in an event space, for example, we're very limited by the space, by what we can do in that area. We can only fit a certain amount of things in a room. However, when you add in an infused augmented reality, the idea here is that you then have a different world that you can play with and overlay on top of the pre-existing one. So using AR and 3D campaigns, I think, is something that we're going to see a lot more of to increase this brand awareness within events. The other space is commerce. So increasing the conversation and reducing the needs for returns, creating a more sustainable environment. Those are things that in the e-commerce space where I think this technology comes in and is really allowing for us to elevate the space once more, increasing conversations, allowing people to then take these products and overlay them into their existing reality spaces. IKEA furniture, for example, you can see what the sofa looks like in your room before you even buy it. That's the use of augmented reality. And so as we think about trade shows, for example, and bringing in now vehicles, things that would take a lot of carbon, a large carbon footprint to get to a trade show. Now we can bring them in, leveraging these tools and technology, and on top of that, allow for then this mixed reality environment where you're now interacting with this vehicle that's in the space, but virtually. Taking this idea into restaurants, we're already starting to see the menus be digitalized through QR codes. The expansion to that is the whole menu being a mixed reality interactive element where you can then just sit at the table and select what you want off of this menu that is that's created in this digital space. So those are just a few small examples of where I think this is going. For me, when I was with the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers, we had an event at the Broadmoor. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the location, it's a very large campus, multiple buildings. And so as any attendee at any meeting, one of the most important things and one of the most frustrating things is navigating, trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And so on this large campus, we wanted to solve for that problem. And I always recommend, before even using the technology, what are you trying to solve for? What's the problem in front of you, and how can these tools help? For us, it was, okay, well, we have a concern of navigation. So why don't we use augmented reality to help support that? So we put QR codes around the campus, and these QR codes were on various marketing materials. They were on doors, they were floor decals, and certain QR codes, that certain ones and there were certain colors were for navigations. You could hold up your mobile device to the QR code. It would show you where you were and then provide you a list of different options to select from different spaces around the campus. And once you select it, it would then show you the direction to that space, where you could then hold up your phone, turn left, and the arrow would point you in the direction that you were supposed to head in. The other QR codes were activations, where they would help support our brands, our sponsors, that existed in the space, whether they were videos, whether they were interactive materials, whether they were just simply PDFs. They were all kind of integrated within the experience that we had at the conference. And speaking of experiences, at the very end of that experience, we had a gala, and each gala we theme a different, under a different group. And so that year we did Game of Thrones. And so the things that we were able to create using augmented reality were amazing. You can't normally bring a dragon into a meeting space, but we did. And it breathed fire and everyone was okay. We had eggs hatching with baby dragons inside. So those are the types of fun things that you can do with the space of augmented reality. We had the Aflac duck fly over top of the lake at the Broadmoor. So it's a lot of fun, but also it solves a lot of concerns and problems that we may have.
If I may, Eric, I also wanted to bring up something that's a little more ethereal, that plays off of Derek's, tactical experiences. And that is this concept that as a culture, because of the pandemic, because of the sort of explosion in technology and all this tech in many different categories has just sped up years because the pandemic drove it, that we have consumers now who are expecting, just as consumers, not even as attendees at events, but are expecting experiential, are expecting some kind of experience, because the pandemic drove us outside and it drove us into environments where the only way we could interact was to have experiences. And that's why you see the launch of all these physical museums now in all these different states, where it's the Museum of Ice Cream, where you're walking in an environment, you take great pictures. We're seeing apps like the Fever app launch. And if you guys don't have that, you should download Fever, Fever, because it gives you things to do in your city, but it's all experiences. And so one of the great things that Derek is talking about is creating an experience for your attendees. So as human beings, as fans right now of certain intellectual property, or when you go to an event, you're a fan of that topic, that event, at heart, a human being, you want to create experiences because we're all going to be expecting that now. It's part of our thing right now to have an experience. I mean, you can even look at what's happening as we turn back to travel, in that people would rather pay for an experience than an object. Right. And so we all have to understand as event producers that we need to create experiences. And so AR gives us a way to do that, that now has been lit up by the pandemic with the simple idea of those menus that Derek mentioned, and even the shoppable idea, Snapchat, and I put that in the thing, launched in the last year, shoppable ads that now people are getting used to, where you're watching Snapchat and you just, lift up your phone if you're watching it on the computer and scan the QR code and you get more information. All of this behavior is driving this base expectation in all of our attendees, in all of our fans, that you need to create some experience. And again, live sports, another great example. And I think Derek, you and I talked about that.
Yeah.
That you're starting to see at home when you're watching the screen, those overlays that show the play, that's AR. And then now you're being able to hold up your phone and have the play actually show up in your living room, or maybe the referees speak directly to you as an augmented reality character. So all I'm saying is this has really lit up this sort of core competency, this core experiential need for all of our attendees.
Hey, Laura, I love. Go ahead, Erica. I'm sorry.
Well, I just a thought that I wanted to add to that, because I think our attention spans have all been shortened because of, all of this virtual digital that we're doing. And yet AR has been used in so many different industries for educational purposes. It used to be that surgeons learned through AR and AR type glasses surgery, and now they're performing surgeries with augmented reality. military has been using it for forever. And now we have it in our cars, like you've been saying. And I've actually seen some augmented reality a few years ago, before it was even that popular, in a booth for a Boeing jet, talking about executive jets and the inside, to make that inside of the jet come to life. And people just learn so much more quickly that way than with talking heads, or, you know, and now we're learning, it's a known fact that we're learning through short videos much more, and especially executives that just don't have the time, through these shorter videos. So as augmented reality continues, it's going to affect every industry. And it's not going to be, I think people think that it's really expensive and it's so foreign to use, but it really is easier than you think.
Yeah, and that's the SDKs I mentioned, all of that. If all of these companies launch SDKs, that means that it is more approachable and more affordable for development. And that's the whole point of all these companies doing that, is they want you to develop things. They want you to use their worlds and create content. And they're making it easier and more affordable because they get it, right? They understand that in order to make this happen, people have to be able to do it. It has to be affordable. That's what's sort of separating AR and VR in a way. VR is a little bit more expensive, you know, different set of skills. And again, you know, this hardware device. So AR is just a little bit more approachable and a great tool in that toolkit. And Derek, I know you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that the idea of, first of all, rewinding back, I'm still waiting for the hologram from Star Wars where I can make a phone call and the person just pops up there. That is kind of still.
I know, this is Darth Vader.
it's in my wish list along with my hovercraft from Back to the Future. Those are the two things, and I'm like, where are they? Hello, we should be here by now. But fast forwarding, the idea of these tools being used in our spaces currently, it's just like the mobile device. When it first came out, it wasn't accessible to everyone. But with the frequency of use and the more adoption, the prices went down, and more people started to get involved and engaged. And now anyone can make an app that goes on your mobile device. These technologies are the same way. This is the next evolution in our space of really coming in and being able to change our world and evolve it in a different era. And so, go ahead, Lori.
Well, no, I was just going to say the other thing to think about that's kind of exciting about what you just mentioned is that if you create a AR experience, you're associating an image or a physical environment with a digital asset. You can go back into that application and swap out that asset. So if you create an experience at a physical event that's very specific to that event, but then now you go back to your stores or online or whatever it is, you could still use that programming and that experience, and you could swap out what that physical asset. I know I'm playing with my hands the whole time. I don't know why, but but you can swap out whatever is the trigger. You know, like once you've programmed something, you know, it's called spatial computing. That's the geeky name for AR. But once you change, you know, you can swap out the asset that pops up that's triggered by whatever it is that you program. So this is not a one-time spend a ton of dough and do this thing at an event. This is actually something that you can develop and grow over time. And especially as your core teams develop some basic skill sets with QR codes and things like that, this becomes an ongoing part of your day-to-day operations. Just like restaurants now have to put their menus on QR codes in this new world, you're going to start to see brands have some sort of AR experience alongside of their website. It will be the cost of doing business. And so the sooner you jump in and the more experiences that you have, the more ahead of the game you're going to be.
So, and I'd like to add, I did put in a useful XR toolkit, and some of that has what Derek was talking about with his event, and some of it talks about different resources. My planning company, Blends Events. We do most of my events are on the liquor side. So I put in the liquor world has they use a lot of augmented reality. So you'll see some of the cool cocktails that come to life and liquors that come to life and what they've done. And, you know, to your point, Lori, I really feel in the future, and I know you guys want to talk about the future. Two things that I think that are really key here is that what Derek talked about, that content is king. So, you know, that he was sharing with you that event, which is in that Google link that I sent you guys. That content is going to make whatever is interesting or that learning experience come to life, and it'll sink in. They'll never forget it. Just like that whiskey I was telling you, they'll never forget that whiskey. But the other thing that I think is going to be really prevalent, you mentioned QR codes. I don't know if I'm going to age myself too much, but I remember when QR codes were an app you had to download in order to scan the QR code.
Yeah.
Now you just scan it off of your phone. So with augmented reality, any image like the liquor bottles, for instance, or a cocktail coaster can come to life. So any image can come to life, but you have to have an app. I predict one day it's going to be even easier. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's going to just evolve like the QR code thing did. And, you know, to your point, also with Google and iPhone, they've made it so easy for you to figure out how to do your own apps for augmented reality, but you can hire a company. There's tons of companies out there like Roar and all these other companies that can do it for you too. So it's not something that you need to have a staff that understands how to create an augmented reality app.
So, I mean, we spent, I want to just quickly touch on virtual reality because we've talked about augmented reality, and I don't want to lose the face here around this tool specifically because I think there's so much power in the virtual reality space. I participated in a simulation at Convening Leaders, which is one of PCMA's largest events normally in January, and it was all around being homeless. And so in this simulation, you get into the space, your house, your home, and you lose your job. And then you have to sell certain things in your home and you choose those things. And then all of a sudden your money still depletes. You still haven't found a job, and then you're evicted. And now you're in a car. Now you have to navigate living in a vehicle. And then from that car, you eventually get your car taken away from you because you're not supposed to be idling and resting and sleeping in it. And then you're on a bus where then you're hassled by people and folks are trying to take your things. And then you're eventually isolated. And I walked out of that simulation crying because I found I was connected then to the experience that individuals go through in becoming homeless and what they experience on that side. So all of that story is just to say, virtual reality is a way for us to really see through the eyes of other people. And one of the events that I did prior to leaving the council was what it was like to be a Black man or a Black male. And we worked with a technology provider to create a simulation around this and put our attendees through it. And then it was from kid through adulthood. And after that simulation, individuals walked away with a different perspective, a different idea of what it could be like to be in someone else's shoes. Right now, we talk about that so much in this idea of acceptance, of inclusivity, of leveraging diversity. But what if we can actually put people in the shoes of someone else, put them through the experiences that other people have, whether it's because of race, whether it's because of disability, whether it's because of gender, all of these simulations, there are multiple simulations that exist out in the space currently that we can all kind of go through even right now through video games, through VR simulations. But I think virtual reality is the tool that we will see that really helps us grow in this area of diversity and acceptance, and will really push boundaries there and help us evolve even more as a society.
I just added I don't know if you know about this project, Derek, but it totally speaks to what you're saying, which is how VR is an empathy driver. And there is a project that Van Jones and a VR director, Elijah Allen Blitz, did that actually won an Emmy, called The Messy Truth. And you guys should check it out because it does exactly what you're talking about, Derek. It takes, it's a number of episodes, and it puts you in different situations where you would experience that person's experience. And going back to what you were saying, again, if we go back to the event experience, for training, VR is huge, especially if you want to train a sales force. So one of the things that I know I'm frustrated about at events, because I give executive show floor tours, and often when we get to an exhibitor's booth, they've hired some local talent at that convention center to man the booth. And those folks just know a paragraph, right, sometimes, and it's very frustrating. One of the things that's happening now with VR is it's putting staff through training so that they can actually experience someone coming up to them at a booth and asking questions. And that kind of visceral cognitive training inside of a VR environment that Derek just detailed really excellently is a better training than having them read a manual or remember a paragraph. And so for your sales staff to really play out what's going to happen on the floor, or what would work at an event, or does this booth's layout work, or any of the issues, the problem solving that you need to do in the various scenarios at events, VR is a great training tool for all of that. It really is, and it really does impact your neuroreceptors in terms of information. I have done many VR experiences, like Derek said, where I walk out of it and I'm a weeping mess, which is embarrassing because you take off the headset and you're like, but the other thing also in VR that's so interesting too, and many of you may have done experiences like this, and this is more referred to as location-based experiences, but this is true XR, but that's combining VR with a physical environment. So I don't know if anyone in the audience has gone to Dreamscape or went to the Void when it was open, but Dreamscape in particular is now available in major cities, and you can go with like 8 people and have a communal VR experience together. But what they've done is they've physically built out an environment that maps to the VR experience. So one of the things that I did was a dragons experience that mapped to the How to Train Your Dragon. And you actually sit on this horse-shaped thing, you put on a VR backpack and headset, and you're in that IP, that world. You're in the Flying Dragons world and How to Train Your Dragon world, and you are actually flying on a dragon, and they're blowing wind, right? And then when the dragon sneezes, they splash water on you. And so this is a really full Monty virtual experience. And that's another thing that's starting to happen in worlds that you go into. Like I went to Dune, the screening of Dune, and it was a 4D experience.
Yeah.
So the chairs moved, there was smoke, there was, again, some sprays. All of this, again, is that base level of experience that we're all going to have. So again, VR becomes this tool, and it is really powerful. And someone, I think, asked a question about, what Facebook's Play is all about. And I just wanted to mention that, I think, and I know we're going to stay away from metaverses, but really what's happening is when you create an environment, a world, whether it's AR or VR, that world is a metaverse. At its base, a metaverse is just a virtual environment that's now getting monetized through the blockchain, through NFTs, and that's a whole nother panel. But it really is. But Facebook understands that eventually our interactions will be all in virtual environments, and those virtual environments will be monetized. And so all of that moves in that direction. So the same thing with Niantic. Niantic's vision is that everyone's going to be creating these outside AR experiences. But what will happen, because it's on the Niantic platform, is that it becomes a Niantic metaverse of apps that people built, of experiences that people built. So the big issue right now in all this VR AR stuff, really, this is a meta concept, if you will, is that Facebook and you know, even Microsoft and Niantic and Qualcomm and social VR platforms, they are all competing to be the metaverse. And we just have to ignore that for right now, because it's crazy land. And what we want to do is create great experiences for people, right?
Yeah,
And
it's kind of like the app that you can only get on your iPhone and not on your Android.
It's just obnoxious, I think.
Right?
Well, we want everything to be available to everybody, but that we live in America, which is fantastic because it's competitive and, you know, and it's capitalism. And so what happens is everyone's competing, but what's great about that is the tech rises to the top because of that competition. But it's also an explosion. Am I on Roblox right now? Am I doing Fortnite? Oh, my avatar changes and now I'm here and now I'm there. I mean, it's cray cray. So to simplify it, you want to just create a great experience for whatever you're doing. And Erica, I know you wanted to lead us into the future.
Well, and you know what, that was the perfect, it was the perfect question, because people do wonder what, so thank you, Paul, for putting that question in there. People do are wondering what Meta is all about in Facebook. And that was a perfect description. It's kind of like, who's going to own the internet? Because that's the new internet, basically. It's going to be a whole new world.
I think it's, I understand them wanting to rebrand, but what happens in 3 or 4 years when there's a new thing? Do they change their name again? It's just, you know, a lot of people want to get rid of the word XR because it's still a little on the techie side, and change it to metaverse and call everything metaverse, just like spatial computing doesn't really work for your average consumer. So we're all trying to find the language for this that will drive engagement and drive, you know, monetize this space and get more people to adopt. So what are the words and ways to jump into this that make it more approachable? So if Meta helps everyone do that, great. You know what I mean? I mean, to me, it's just a marketing game. Facebook is over of where it was born, and they need to evolve, and it's good not to be stagnant.
Yeah, I mean,
everyone's going to be changing their names.
The evolution here. Look at our two-dimensional websites, and the evolution from them and scrolling down and clicking these banners and links is kind of this three-dimensional space. We wouldn't, who on this call hates putting together IKEA furniture, looking at the three-dimensional figure on this flat piece of paper? That's not how we really learn and can compute in our brains. We like to see things all the way around and touch things and see them on spaces. I want to be able to go to, well, I was just going to date myself, jcpenney's.com.
We'll date together.
and see that shirt on my body before I buy it. Like, those are the types of things that we really look forward to as the empowered consumer. And that's what Lori was mentioning at the onset of this conversation. We are all empowered consumers. We know what we want. We know when we want it. And it's up to now the producers and providers and organizations to give that to us in that moment. And so the space of where we're going is being able to take these sites that exist, specifically in the commerce area, and allow for individuals to come in and see the clothes on their body, see the efficiency of having this sofa in this space or this rug in this home, or to see their whole entire house built from top to bottom, furnished and ready to go in this plot of land that may exist over in a different state. So I think there's so much on the horizon as we think of leveraging all of these tools, but we're just at I think, the onset of adoption. And once we get to a high premium, that's when things really are going to start taking off.
Yeah.
So I again put in the useful toolkit info, Derek's info, Lori's info. The useful toolkit, by the way, has links also not only to all of the things that I told you about before, but also to some XR current online magazines that keep you up to date if you want to dive into that every so often. But we have about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to kind of, if you don't mind, unless you have some other thoughts that you wanted to create, I wanted to open up to the group and see who would like to, if you have any questions specific. If not, I'm sure we could, all three of us, talk about XR till the cows come home, and that's dating me.
I've been doing this all along, but sticking in examples of things. But I just went to, when I was at Augmented World Expo, Trip is a mindfulness app that's gotten a lot of funding lately, and it's a subscription model in VR. But I was at an event where they created a meditation room, and you could get away from the loudness of the convention center and go into this room. And they created it. They made it like, all lit really beautifully. And you put on your headset. Trip sponsored it, and you go into Trip's VR experience, and you can have like 20 minutes of meditation. So there's a ton of apps and things that allow you to create unique moments like this at your event, that I think the door is just opening to right now, that we can think outside the box for
the world.
Yeah, right, exactly. To what kind of experiences we want to create.
Well, to that very point, it's the idea of focusing on each attendee is coming for a different reason. And as we try to create more inclusive experiences, I think you just gave a great one. If I have high anxiety in a meeting space and I don't want to be around people 100% of the time, and I need to just get away, providing a space for them underneath the virtual reality to escape the current world and go into another one is a way of really showing your delegates and your participants that you're here to support all people, and that you understand that there are times where someone just needs a laugh, or someone just needs a space to just calm down. Creating these spaces for the various demographics, I think, is key to the evolution of experiences, where you choose your own destiny.
That's great. I wanted to answer Stephanie's question about, will XR technology make having large equipment at Expos a thing of the past? And I think this is the ultimate hybrid question. I think going in person and seeing that piece of equipment can't be replaced. That still is going to happen. But what's going to happen is, from a hybrid perspective, if you can't come to the show, there's a VR experience for you that will allow you to, or an XR experience that will allow you to be around that piece of equipment. And at the show, that VR or XR experience will enhance being around that actual piece. So I don't think this takes away from, physically being at an environment and having that piece. Now, as we move in the future, when maybe we're all really fat people just living in chairs, and we're just plugged in all the time, like Neil Gaiman imagined, maybe that's the case. But I think right now, being in person is still really important. You just have to remember your virtual audience.
Lori, I'm gonna disagree with you highly on this. I think this is a serious trend that we're gonna see. We started seeing it at SEMA 4 years ago, where people were showing different experiences live through AR, VR, XR, if you want to call it that. So I'm going to disagree with you on that. I think we're going to see companies taking a lot less space and providing the simulated experience instead of the live equipment at live events. So I happen to believe that is going to have an impact on the show floor.
Yeah,
and if you look at
them, it's very possible. I just think there's first mover to having stuff at events, but absolutely, Stephanie, I think the world is our oyster right now about what's going to happen. I'm sorry, go ahead, Erica.
No, I was just going to say that, to both of your points, to both Stephanie and your point, Lori, when you use, for instance, augmented reality, you can take an experience, and instead of that person just seeing the tractor that's there, they put on the, the micro lenses, and they're actually experiencing the ride. And
Right.
so there, it can create a whole, if you use augmented reality right, it can enhance whatever equipment's there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I was just gonna add that I don't think it's either or, I think it's both.
Yeah,
And
I think that's right.
the physical things in the space become triggers. And I think we become more selective around what those triggers are, to then, and I say trigger as in this image, this thing is going to trigger a different experience to what Erica was just noting. So I'm going to hold my tablet up over top of this vehicle, and then all of a sudden this vehicle transforms, or it opens up and I can see underneath of the hood, and then toy around with the mechanics, or I'm going to come and the license plate is going to be a trigger, and that's just going to take me around the city in this animation. So I think it's a little bit of both. It's where we see less maybe physical things in spaces. Obviously, again, that helps reduce our carbon emissions, but also then these more selected things that are still there become enhanced. And it's not just the physical anymore, it's the physical on top of whatever virtual assets.
Yeah, I think that's a good, meeting Stephanie and I in the middle point, Derek. I think that's great. And you're right, Stephanie. I think, I don't know that we totally know what exactly is going to happen, but I can tell you that I still remember the Uber helicopter that was showcased at CES like 2 years ago before the pandemic. Like, I'll never forget being physically in that space. Now, VR can give me that same sensation. But I have to say, I'll just always remember being near that, future of mobility thing. So I think you're right. I think it's a combo of what Derek's talking about.
Yeah,
And,
there's a question in here about Wi-Fi, and I just wanted to note that depending upon whatever you're using, whether if you're in an application, everything is housed and embedded in it. If you're external from that, then that's when you need additional tools and resources with Wi-Fi capability.
Yeah, I think data centers are also going to be a new sponsor that we can look to bring to non-category specific events, where you have a data center as a sponsor at any category event, and they provide Wi-Fi and other infrastructure. And in that sense, they are advertising for their industry, but they're also delivering on a solution at the show. And so I think that data centers are an interesting sponsor to look to and to approach any business category right now.
Yeah, and also the other thing that I thought that always have to keep in mind is virtual reality. A lot of times those glasses make people. There are people that have, all kinds of restrictions in using those glasses, whether it be it makes them dizzy, or they have a space issue. So sometimes the augmented reality and the augmented glasses, I think, may be a little bit more user-friendly in the future. Just my thought. Although I love Derek's description. I have always loved that description, Derek, because it's changed my mind on virtual reality a lot. Any other questions before we go? By the way, does everybody know how to save? I would assume that you all know just how to save the chat to your own computer through the menu dots on the chat window, and just hit save chat if you want to save all those links that we gave you.
Yeah, a lot of great resources there.
Well, any last, you shared an awful lot of great information, and we can't thank you enough for your time, Lori and Derek. And yes, if you're going to be at IAE Expo, we'll see you all there in person. Thanks, Stephanie, for saying that. And for the, and again, we want to thank the Southwest chapter of IAE for sponsoring, and also thanks to our annual sponsors, GES and Anaheim Convention and Visitors Bureau.
And thank you, Erica, for hosting. You did a phenomenal job. Great conversationalist with Lori and Derek. Thank you both for participating.
Thank you.
Your knowledge and wisdom that you shared with us.
Well, I'm just a geek for this stuff, you know.
So much fun. So much
Very
fun.
humbled by the expert panelists here.
I think you know a lot more than you think, and the biggest bonus is your curiosity. That's really, as folks in the event business, we just have to be curious, you know.
Yes, exactly. And I think there are so many uses for augmented reality and virtual reality and extended reality going forward. It's so exciting for me. And Derek, I'm so jealous, and Lori, I'm so jealous that you've all been able to use that, you know, before. And Lori, you actually have developed holograms from what I understand, right? Or you use holograms.
Well, I personally am not responsible for developing, but I'll bring those solution providers to events. And so that has come up for us where we find the right provider. And so there have been events where clients have requested things like that. There's a company called Ventana that sets up these kiosks with holograms, and they deliver on a sponsorship message. So that was that solution.
I've seen a few of those, Lori, at like Bio International. I think they had them. It was like a fan that spun and it created.
Yeah, and they also make them games now so that you can play with it. So that's the other thing too, is again, it's creating a great experience and leveraging it smartly based on Erica and Derek's sort of framework of, you know, how do we make this more approachable and more usable and things like that.
Well, and the only thing that I've done, that I personally have done for augmented reality, is my brochure. It actually, I used Roar,
that's so great.
You know, Roar, the app provider that helps. There's a ton of them, and so, and I did that a few years ago. So my brochure has different images that just pop up, cute little hologram ideas on how to get into my Facebook, my LinkedIn, my webpage, and so that was kind of fun to do.
Oh, that's
I haven't
awesome.
seen that.
Yeah, I'm starting to use QR codes a lot at events. So that's another thing.
And, you know, IMAX America has been using augmented reality, fun little things all throughout their convention. I didn't see it doing it so much this year, but a couple years ago, I saw them use it.
We'll see more and more of that moving forward. Again, it goes back to the sustainability initiative. I think more than anything else, that needs to be a focus of our industries. And this is leveraging these tools is just another way of ensuring that we minimize waste and that we continue to elevate the impact.
Yeah. And yes, Robin, I'll bring some brochures to IAE for you. Who's all going to IAE, may I ask? Robin, I know you are. Derek and Lori, are you?
I don't think so, but you know, I change my mind about everything every day.
Like me.
Actually, same.
Yeah, I'm going to CES. I'll be there giving tours. So that's my next one, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Oh, well, good. So when you're in town, please give me a call. I'd love to hook up with you for cocktails.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be convening leaders in Vegas also in January. So.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'll see you, Lori, at CES. I'll be there. So I'll get in touch with you. Come say hi. And then I'll also be convening leaders, Derek.
Oh, nice.
So
I'll meet up.
Yes, for sure, man.
And anybody else that's in Vegas, you better call me, because if I find out that you're here and I don't see you, to give you an in-person hug and not an augmented one. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation. Thanks to the attendees. And it's always, I'm now a new Lori fan, since I haven't known you that well before. I told you I would be.
Thank you. I'm an Erica fan too.
Thanks. And always a Derek fan and Landon fan, and of course Robin and Cindy and Yoko. You're new, but welcome and thanks for attending.
Yes, thank you guys so much again. Very much appreciated.
All right, take care, everyone.
All right,
Bye-bye.
see you guys.